Hi, I'm Kurt Doty with RealmIQ. We are having another RealmIQ session, and our guest today is Andeed Ma, who comes all the way from Southeast Asia in Singapore. And he's an AI expert and scholar and advocate, and we love what he's doing down there. So, Andeed, tell us about yourself, and let's get into a conversation about AI.
Yeah, sounds good. Thanks a lot, Cook, for the invitation. I think it's been a great journey so far. Being in a end user space and later on actually became a technologist. I think that was a journey that reflected about 15 years back. So I've been in the tech industry as an evangelist as well for the past 15 years. So, starting off with automations and back then actually I was also serving a non-profit association that focuses a lot on enterprise risk management. So essentially, the usual operation risk, hazard risk, strategic risk, right, as well as financial risk. But over the years, of course, as a risk manager, we are always forward-looking, right? We ask ourselves what are the next emerging risk, the next 30 to 50 years. So that spontaneously brought us into the context of, hmm, sounds like artificial intelligence is something that we as a risk manager should be looking at. I think that conversation started way back in 2018. That was when I actually started joining a company called ByteDance. Many of you guys may not know this company, but
Yeah.
they are the parent company of TikTok. Right?
Yes.
And for those who do not know what TikTok is, it is an AI. A lot of you guys may think that it's social media, to just like Facebook, etc. Yes, Facebook started off as an analytics company, but this company, TikTok, is an artificial intelligence company. Right? So they just put on an application that allows consumer to consumer interactions, more interactively through video content, and that harnesses all their computer vision power, etc. So that began my journey into become a technologist in AI, where I speak to a lot of software engineers, engineering managers, as well as the business leaders around the context of AI, and putting together my experiences in risk management, and that got me into the space, right, of discussing what some of the AI governance topics, and what is important in AI governance and what exactly is AI governance. Yeah. So that's pretty much a quick sum up of
Well, yeah,
how it comes together.
fascinating history how you came into it. I came from the creative side, which there's no risk, just being creative and playing with these tools is kind of a fantasy land, but it does get serious when it gets into copyright issues and
Oh
exploitation of
yes.
artists' imagery. That's a certain type of risk, but I'm curious as to your definition of risk because there are different types of risk, and if you could
Yep.
elaborate on that, that's a big question. But what risk are you identifying that AI poses that's different than your long track record in risk management? I'd be curious to hear that answer.
I mean, that's a good question, Kirk. To be honest, I think for the audience, we need to understand what exactly risk management is and what it does for us, right? I
Yeah.
think that's really important. I think one of the key emphasis around risk management is we want to protect the values that we have created. At the same time, when you practice risk management, you create value as well, right? So these are the two things that are highlighted even in the ISO 31000. Uh, in 2018 is a risk management guideline that the association advocates on.
Mm-hmm.
And so create value with values. So if we bring that into the context of, looking at generative AI, for instance, obviously the creation of value is how do we use the technology generative AI to create contents, right? To create new intellectual properties. Sometimes it could be art, work, a form of expression. That's fantastic, right? But then we want to then protect this value. We want to protect the value of the original person who created parts of it, right? As well as perhaps the algorithms or the creators of the algorithms who created parts of it. And that, to be honest, is still a conversation that, Kurt and I and the global community is still talking about because there's no regulations specifically on that, right? There are regulatories on specific intellectual properties, trademarking. etc.
Yeah.
But how about this person does not exist.com? Wait, I'm sure there's this URL exactly, right? So the images that comes out of those, how do we prove that that image doesn't exist in this world, right? Or
Right. Yeah.
this exact face don't exist. Yeah.
Right. So
So
you,
those are the
you
risks.
yeah. So you mentioned intellectual property and that being a risk. That certainly matters to Hollywood. We just had a big strike here, or it's still
Yep.
ongoing. The actors are on strike. The writers resolve their concerns. Intellectual property as it relates to entertainment properties, though it sounds playful. It's $1 billion business of Hollywood, and it has international implications. And there's a lot of disruption. And I'm sure in your groups that you work with, as well as the clients that you interact with in businesses, intellectual property means different things. It might be
Yes.
a business plan, a marketing
Yep.
strategy, and the
The design.
education of the workforce uh,
Exactly.
should be very careful about what they put into these LLMs, correct?
Yes. And in fact, if I say today, right, if we are to shoot, say, a TikTok video, I'm sure there are backgrounds that contains objects, brands, buses moving around, intellectual properties. How are we protecting that? Do we need to consider that granularity
Mm-hmm.
even at the non-generative AI world? So are we being biased, right, and not looking at things in the same context, right? So those are
Yeah,
really,
no,
really
yeah,
interesting
no, you
conversation.
you
Yeah.
bring up a good point, because what I've noticed about the legal battles that are going on are about how to identify generative AI imagery, okay? And if an artist's work or photographer's work was included in that data set or scraping to create another image. And so there's this emphasis on, oh, we need to know if it's a generative AI image. And it's like, what needs to happen, and I'm hoping there are technology, and I think Glaze is maybe doing this, is
Hmm.
that no, every image needs to be marked with ownership and have a traceable history, so that wherever it might bubble up, whether it's in someone else's artwork, as just literally a direct rip into someone's social media post, to whether it's being harnessed within a generative AI platform,
Yep.
every image needs to be watermarked indelibly at the pixel level, and it needs to be tracked. And excuse me,
Yep.
but wasn't that the promise of blockchain, that we would be
Yep.
able to make social or contracts, digital contracts with imagery as it moves through, the internet or metaverse, whatever you want to call it,
Hmm.
and come up on the other side wherever. And if it's being monetized, exploited, or monetized in another way, well, guess what? You have some tracking mechanism that shows the source, identifies the source of that creative,
Hmm.
and maybe they get paid. What a
Yep.
concept, right? Wouldn't that be a new economy? Instead of one big tech and the exploitation and piracy that's going on, why can't we create a new economy that empowers all authors to own their stuff, own their shit wherever, and if it appears somewhere else, they're going to make money off of it, and it might diffuse the outrage that creator has. Oh my God, this guy used my thing. It's like, oh yeah, he
Mm.
used it or repurposed it or altered it, but he also made $500,000 because he made a song or something, God knows what. And we're going to
Exactly.
pay you $100,000. And then all of a sudden, that original author is going to get very quiet. And they say, oh, I can make money off of this. I like that. But that's thinking of it from a business perspective with a wider lens as it relates to all imagery. And until we have that conversation, I think it's going to be a piecemeal solution to, oh, did they use, is there a hidden watermark in there from a famous manga artist that ended up in an anime
Yep.
comic book? It just seems quaint to the real theft that has gone on for years versus just these little instances. It has devastated artist careers and stuff, but
Yep.
but I just, how do you shift the conversation to that larger picture of photography and illustration and art and video in general, not just identifying it as an AI image? Is that in your conversations at all on the ethics side?
Yes, of course. I think, in fact, you highlighted a few points. First, you use the word all images. Even an international standard organization, ISO, will
ISO.
not have everyone who agrees to that, right? Even if 80% of the world agrees to ISO, there's still 20% that don't. So these are actually best practices that exist in our world, right? And the idea of watermarking and etc., what we all know as citations in literature and literature reviews, journals,
Yeah.
right? It's nothing new, right? It's now about how do we execute something that is dynamic. Because when we are dealing with artificial intelligence, it is not building just a simple workflow, or an automation condition builder with operators, values. It's not just that. Because the entire model could interpret and surprise you with results that you didn't know you come in, right? And this is what we call unintended consequences, right? So some of the unintended consequences could be good,
Yep.
but it could be bad. So how do we balance the good and bad here, right? Requires more than humans. We are not taking humans out of the loop. It's more than humans, means we need to work in a symbiotic relationship with AI
Yes.
in order to execute some of this tracking of watermarks. Trust
Yes.
me, you can't
Yes.
find you can't hire millions of people just to watermarking at the speed of nanoseconds, producing new pixels. You need what we call computational governance, AI on AI. I believe that's something that you are talking about. Companies that are creating, and a model to watch how generative AI are creating. So how you protect the creation. Again, this entire protecting and creating is risk management practice.
Yes, thank you so much. Because I don't think governments are going to solve this problem. I don't think laws are going to solve this problem. It's going to be technology that solves this problem. You said AI on AI, right?
Yes. And you need humans, you need a
Why can't you?
community, right?
Yeah, well, you have to have a human come up with a concept of, like, we need to, like, let the tech govern itself
The
and
government, yeah.
bubble up these things. I was just blogging about the horrible war in Israel versus Hamas,
Yep.
and certainly on Twitter and even on other news organizations, there's all this footage being shown of conflicts that aren't from the last 3 days. They're from other battles. They're from literally video games of
Mhm.
artillery shooting, and
Yep.
so those aren't AI generated images. Those are time shifted presentations of archival footage, and it's not being identified. And so there are bad actors even without the AI part of it. But
Exactly.
but again, why can't those images and that footage be tagged in a way and tracked that you have a warning, a date stamp? Come on, it's like, I go back to the early video camera days. You had the date
Yes.
timestamp. It's like,
Your photos with date
yeah,
and time.
right. I mean, come on. They had the concept, 30 years ago, 50 years ago, and
Yeah.
now we have the digital technology to enact it in a meaningful way, which needs to happen because there's a lot of concern around deep fakes. Another friend of mine called it synthetic media, which is the positive spin on it, because there are good things happening with avatars and look photorealistic people talking to you from a customer service perspective. I think that those are the bright futures of synthetic media. But deep fakes, yeah, it's becoming harder to tell. I mean, there was a Zelensky video that looked pretty bad. And he was telling the soldiers to put their arms down, and it kind of looked
But if
bad. And you could
yeah, I
say,
mean, if you
but it's
if
getting
you
more
remember
sophisticated, right?
exactly,
It's
if you remember Mid Journey 1 as compared to Mid Journey version 5 and 6. Yep. So
within
the
18 months.
technology evolved. Yeah.
Yeah, within
Technology
18
evolved very
months, just
quickly.
like sky hockey stick of resolution that is incredible.
Yes.
So, and then that
So there's
next
one
thing will be video. The next thing will be video.
exactly, exactly. And in fact, the very important elements here that we should not miss out is when artificial intelligence is in the conversation, humans must always be in it, right? How human creates it, uses it. I think
Yeah,
one of the biggest
I
challenge
just
now
don't
is
trust
yeah.
humans. That's the problem.
Well, we
I
are
mean,
still the
really,
creators, right?
for every good actor, there's a bad actor.
There's always a bad
and
actor,
and
yes.
I'm not talking about Hollywood. I'm talking about people with malicious intent.
Of
And
course.
I'm an optimist about all this stuff, and I think the bad actors, trigger an algorithm that it becomes big news when it's actually, I think, a minority story
Yep.
versus the majority story. But because of the sensationalism of it, it bubbles up to the surface and I think can deter
Mm.
adoption of AI and embracing of what is an incredible supercomputing technology that I think can I believe can elevate mankind to focus on larger problems that we're facing
Exactly.
as a society, as humankind, as our planet faces extinction. I
Yes.
think we need to get to that upper level. So, it's combating doomsday scenarios, it's
Yep.
combating bad actors and playing up the good that's happening. I have been studying a lot what's happening with the advancements in healthcare and medicine, and I think it's a very interesting category to study because there's no bad actors. Doctors are concerned with the positive outcomes for their patients, and that altruism based on the Hippocratic Oath means they embrace technology to help them diagnose people in a faster way and get better treatments and identifying things that they couldn't with a group of 5 doctors and a radiologist, and looking at one x-ray, but they'll look at 5 million x-rays with AI, and the AI will say, oh, it's this because of what I found out there, the computer speaking. And so I'm holding that up as a good example. And you know they're tracking progress because of that altruistic embrace of AI. And we need stories like that in business, in Hollywood, in legal circles, because it can happen. It's just, where are you coming from as a human being?
Yes, I agree. I think it's a matter of who we are involving, at the stage of creating and using. Certainly there are bad actors, right? And that's where risk management comes in, right? I mean, sometimes among us, they may be bad actors, but it's around how we actually involve them, right? And, the idea of risk management is always asking what can go wrong,
Mm-hmm.
right? This is a very risk-based thinking, right? And we want to ask ourselves if we are breached. So we always have the idea of we assume that we are breached. What can go wrong, right? So one of the key things that I think, regardless whether we are creating a process design, whether we are creating a molecule that is trying to cure someone, by the way, if you change the binary, it harms someone, right? So so how can we actually protect that sort of action, right? Be able to say detect malicious act.
Yeah.
All this has to be thought through and be incorporated at the design stage, at the creation of the AI stage. And that's about it. Because if that is not in,
Yeah.
that's where there's vulnerabilities. And vulnerabilities creates opportunities for people to take advantage on.
Yeah. And as much as I appreciate all these demos of ChatGPT working for people and how to do mid-journey image making, it's fantastic. I'm creative. I appreciate it. I use that stuff every day. But the conversations that you and I are having, I think these need to get bubbled up and be part of people's LinkedIn feeds, because these are the discussions that are going to determine the success of AI as a new age. And
Yes,
it's not going to be how photorealistic something is based on a prompt. It's going to be, like you said, what is your intention, right? Is
yep,
it good or bad? And having a discussion with the developers who are developing the LLMs, what is your intention in building that?
yes,
And yeah, because eventually they're all going to be talking to themselves, right? And so what are we doing to train these LLMs as children, right? What are we training them to do so that as they become adults, they hopefully develop a moral compass, which is a very
exactly.
human thing, right? And
In fact, you touch on a very key elements of what I strongly it's about around social sciences. Now it's even more important when we are talking about the elements of AI. Social sciences involve how we care about early stage childhood, the grantology areas, elderlies, and the
mhm,
many issues around mental psychology, right? How you interact with people, and that's the reason why I mentioned that humans needs to get involved even more, because now is then the question is, how do we engage them, right? How do we engage them includes into the education segment where we educate people on how to use tools like say ChatGPT, right? How do we even create awareness that ChatGPT is not a search engine? You don't put one word and expect ChatGPT to know what you're thinking. It's not
right,
Google, right? So that those are things that doesn't come naturally to us when we've been using Google for the past decades.
right.
Just human behaviors, and the human nature can create what we call an AI trap, where we think the AI is harming us, but in actual fact, it is kind of mirroring you. There's an infinity mirror that is behind every single action that you do, that is learning, that is, then
Coming back at
reciprocal
you. I
back.
love that.
It
I love that.
reflects about you, and so on and so forth. So you being a bad parent, you get a bad child.
Yeah,
Right? So
right.
that's something that I think
Absolutely.
we need to get some of our audience in this segment, to start thinking about AI not being just a stick technology. It's no longer like a technology like mobile phone, laptops, TV, calculators. It has the ability to learn, self-evolve,
Yeah,
self adapt.
I may be wrong, and I'm always saying it's software people. There are no robots. But what you're saying is it's a mirror of yourself. And
It's organic.
I've been an advocate of, it's conversational. It isn't search for this, give me a link. It's like, help me with this. I need to find out about this. And your result is this. Great. Can you elaborate on that? And, it's a conversation, right?
Yes.
With
And
yourself personified as an assistant, a co pilot, right?
exactly. And the way, by using things like please help me, would you mind, you know, there's a level of teaching that you're making into the algorithms. You're teaching the algorithms what empathy looks like,
Yeah.
right? Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
like, yeah, it's how you treat people. right?
Yes.
And maybe not swear, and
Yes.
stuff like that. How can you teach it to be civil as we are entering
Yes.
or in a very uncivil society? How can we take a deep breath and realize the opportunity as the people using these programs, these LLMs every day are going to be the ones that educated through what we ask it to do. Right?
Exactly.
It isn't a
And
government that's going to, train that. It's like the people using it every day. And it's an everyday
yes.
responsibility. I've talked about race and gender bias, and I purposely, if I'm creating an image, I'll say, put an Asian American man in, this role of doing something, put an African American woman in this role doing something, because the more they hear that, or an indigenous person from Australia, it won't just default to the white guy, which is me.
It's a cook,
But
how many,
it,
yeah,
it it's a personal responsibility as a
exactly.
prompter who's interacting with the program, to be purposeful and deliberate. If
Yes.
if you're going to be lazy and just say, draw me a superhero, it's going to give you Iron Man or Superman.
Yep.
But if you say, no, I want a female African American superhero, um, and that's being purposeful.
Yes.
It's
And
like casting. So I talk about Hollywood a lot
yes.
because that's my past. That's my history.
Nice.
It's like casting. It's like, how I have a cast list. How can I populate this to show this movie's reflective of our society in which we live, or America in which, I live, and
Yes.
round it out, right? It's like, but that's being purposeful with casting. So how do we cast with AI in our prompts? I don't know if that's all ethical, but it's the right thing to do to counter some of the bias that is happening, and it is within our control to have it learn from us. As a society, as a prompter, we have a responsibility.
So one of the key things around biasness is when, let's imagine you have a class of 10 people, right? But only 3 people are allowed to always interact with the AI that you've bought. Would that be already a bias at the beginning? You know, actually the technology itself is the most unbiased right at the beginning. It is us, right? We determine who should use.
Right. Right.
That
It's
itself
yeah,
forms
I
the
love
very
that.
first
Bias
stage
at
of
the
biasness.
beginning, but
Yes,
because we were lazy at the beginning, it
yes,
turned out to be biased, right?
yes. And
So
it bought,
there's no malintent of
yeah,
the LLM. It's like, what do you want me to do,
yeah.
right?
That's all I know,
Okay, I'll
right?
give you a bunch of white superheroes because that's all you asked. That's all you asked for.
Yeah, yep. And let's say if you have all 10 of your class member using it, that forms at least a balance, right? A non-biased stage.
Yeah.
And whatever turns out from there, you know, be biased again because individually who are inputting elements are biased themselves. And that creates different weightage and responses.
Yeah,
So yeah,
it's fascinating because technology has forever been in the domain of engineers and
yes,
people who code. And all of a sudden, it's now as easy as speaking to your screen and getting results. It's amazing, right? So all of a sudden, it's this human interaction, not through technology or the impasses of, I don't know code, I'm not an engineer. All of a sudden, there's this human interaction that's guiding these things, and we've never been faced with that before. I mean, Alexa and Siri are very primitive. They've been around
yep,
forever, but they're very primitive. It was cool. It never evolved to what we have
Yeah,
today,
instructional. Yep.
right? Conversational.
Yes. Yeah,
And now with
conversational.
interfaces going, voice option or only, it's going to be people talking. And
Yes.
and that's just a completely new relationship with technology. And there has to be a
Yes.
recognition that, well, we're the humans driving it, and you're not an
Because
engineer, you're a human being. And that's okay to have that naivete as a human being to teach your children, right?
yep,
Being a parent is somewhat intuitive because, you care about these kids and you end up making the right decisions and, raising a family. It's the same thing here. How can we look to in this infancy phase, which we're quickly growing out of? How can we look at them as now teenagers, right? The rebellious teens.
exactly. Yep. In fact, Kirk, I had a segment in my book. So I'm releasing my book in February next year on AI for humanity, how to build a sustainable AI for the future.
Yeah.
There's this title that everyone should be looking out for is around nurturing AI to trust AI. There's a lack of trust because we are not doing a good job in nurturing. So that's exactly what you've just said before.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I came about it in a roundabout way. I should have read your book. But listen,
Next year.
we're hitting our half an hour. So are you going to be speaking at any events you want to plug? Because this will go on LinkedIn, and it's a great introduction of you to, even though people know you in America. But if you have anything you want to plug away.
Well, there's a few small events that's happening, but not the big ones yet. But we are looking at having AI summit in Singapore. That could be happening end of October. Yep.
Oh, wow.
So that one is
Okay.
something that we're working with the local government, right? So we are really advocating at the governmental level,
Okay.
right, where we can influence all the regulatories, because at this stage we are still very early in the designing of what exactly some of the rules and regulations needed to govern AI.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, keep up the good work, and
Thanks.
love to be connected. Thanks so much for coming on our little Realm IQ sessions. And I have to say that you are also one of our Realm IQ mentors and advisors. So thanks for joining us in that effort,
Thank you so much,
and
Kirk, for inviting
appreciate
me.
your expertise coming across the Pacific pond. I was talking with one of our mentors in Germany yesterday, so we have we're covering both ponds here. But thank you so much. And for those watching, please come back for more sessions, Realm IQ sessions. We have a lot of interesting guests and leaders in AI, and keep coming back for more. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Kirk.
Okay,
Thank you,
take
everyone.
care. Thanks, everyone. You can now catch Realm IQ sessions on your favorite podcast channels, including Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and iHeart Podcasts. Or listen to the full sessions at kurtdoty.co/RealmIQ. If your company is interested in reaching an audience of AI professionals and decision makers to promote your event or product, we do have sponsorship opportunities. If you enjoy these discussions on AI, please push that subscribe button below. I'll see you in the next video.
RealmIQ. Book your corporate AI workshop today.
Subscribe to our Media Slam newsletter and learn more about the intersection of design, content, and technology. kurtdoty.co. Branding, marketing, and product development.